to talk about wrist pain and the accompanying elbow pain. I've gotten several questions from therapists recently who are in the throes of this thing that I think almost all of us can relate to, right? We're trying to do good work, and then our wrists, and then sometimes our elbows, and then even up to our shoulders just get really sore and achy. So I want to propose 3 things: crease less, wrist less, and do less. So let's go through those one at a time. The first is crease less. What this means is you need to use your body's own signs to show when to shift your position. Here's my guideline. When I'm working, I pay attention to that crease on the back of my wrist. In my experience, a little bit of that crease is fine and not a problem, but anytime my hand to forearm is approaching a 90-degree angle, that crease gets pretty pronounced. It gets pretty visible, and that to me is always a sign that I want to change my position. So the easiest thing that I know is to decrease the crease. Again, crease less. So if you find yourself in that very close to 90 position, you're placing a lot of strain on the wrist joint, all you need to do is back your feet away from the table. So watch what happens here. I'm at 90 degrees, and then as soon as I back away from the table, my hand to forearm ratio changes, right? That degree is very different now, and the crease is gone. So oftentimes, especially when we're doing really focused, deep work, we tend to get up over the client, right? This is a recipe for disaster for the wrist crease as well as for our elbows and shoulders. So as soon as you see that wrist crease get too pronounced, think of backing your feet away from the table in order to decrease the crease, or crease less. Now, the second tip is just wrist less, meaning use that soft hand, right, as your point of contact less. We have so many others. We don't need to always be using this open palm to do our petrissage and our effleurage strokes. Particularly when we notice that crease getting pronounced, in addition to backing up and decreasing the crease, the other thing that we can do, our second option, is just to use the wrist less and therefore use another point of contact. So notice how I see the crease developing as I'm doing effleurage down the back, and all I need to do, I don't even have to stop the stroke, is just replace that soft hand, that palm, with a soft fist. And then I can keep on going, and there's no crease in the wrist. What's happening here is, instead of placing a lot of strain on the hand and thus on the wrist, I have my soft fist that is completely in line with the whole kinetic chain. So my wrist joint is in a neutral position, my elbow joint is in a neutral position, and my shoulder joint is in a neutral position. Therefore, I can apply as much pressure as I want without any strain on my wrists or my elbows. If you feel comfortable with it, the forearm does exactly the same thing. rather than straining with my wrist to continue to use that palm, I can just slide into a forearm position and continue that same stroke. So that is option number 2, wristless. Just find other points of contact. Now, the third is the most important. Do less. So many of the aches and pains that we feel as therapists, whether in our wrists or our elbows or our shoulders or almost anywhere else in our bodies, is because we are trying to be too good. We are trying to do too much. The key here is, with every stroke we do, just use the minimum amount of effort to create the change that the client needs. In other words, do less. The reason why we feel so much ache and pain in these overused joints is because we are putting too much tension in our own bodies as we work. So, the clearest way that we can see that is in the position of our shoulders, right? I want you to cultivate a habit of checking in with yourself as you are working. Anytime you notice your shoulders rising up towards your ears, that means you're holding too much tension there, and almost inevitably, you're holding too much tension elsewhere in that kinetic chain. The other great way that you can observe yourself is to notice your fingertips. Think about this. Anytime you are not using your fingertips or your thumbs, right? So when you're using your forearm or your soft fist or your heel of hand, the fingers and the thumbs are doing nothing. So what should they be doing? Nothing. But if you start paying attention to your own body, what you'll find is oftentimes when we're working really hard to give a really good massage, our fingers start to pop up towards the ceiling. They hold extra tension in them. This is a huge indicator that we are carrying excess tension in our wrists, elbows, etc. So notice the position of your shoulders and notice the position of your fingers and your thumbs. Anytime they are not floppy on the client, because again, they're not doing anything, right, in these strokes. Anytime they are anything but floppy, it means they are doing too much. It means you are doing too much. And that is a sign for you to do less. But you are hopefully thinking, how do we do less? This is where the breath comes in. Our exhalation is the best tool that we have to reduce the amount of tension in our body. So anytime you notice your shoulders rising up or your fingers taut and sprung up towards the ceiling, the first step is to not judge yourself. This is just part of being a good therapist and trying to do a good job. The second step is to become in tune with your breath. So when you're working and your shoulders are up towards your ears, all you're gonna do is take a nice easy inhalation. Think of lengthening your spine up towards the ceiling. And then on the next exhalation, imagine your whole arms and shoulders sinking down with the exhalation. As you practice this, you can even do this while you are doing strokes on your clients. You don't need to stop. You can integrate this into your treatments. The amazing thing is your clients will start to breathe more fluidly and easily too, just unconsciously following your example. So therefore, doing less is good for your own body. It's also good for the client's body. So once again, if you have wrist or elbow tension, you are going to crease less, you're going to wrist less and use other points of contact, and you're going to do less. Try these out and let me know what you think. I'm happy to answer further questions.